Today we're going to go over the pros and cons of different heating options you have to keep your enclosure at the right temperatures. I've sort of gone over these things before in different care videos and stuff, but this is going to be dedicated to comparing heat mats or heat pads, ceramic bulbs or ceramic emitters, and different types of heat bulbs. Some are going to let off a more strong light along with heat, and others are going to be more dim and come in different colors, but still let off heat. Everything I'm talking about will be in the description, and if you buy this stuff with those Amazon links, you'll actually be supporting GoHerping, because each time there's a sale through those links, Amazon will send some of the money my way. Also, it's important to keep in mind some animals are going to need certain things, just depending on their species and how they work best, but we'll talk about that more. And we can start out with heat mats. So these are known as a few different things. It could be a heat mat, a heat pad, under tank heater. They're all the same thing. Some are sticky, some just slide under your enclosure. But whichever one you pick, they're going to be made for certain enclosure sizes, so you can find the one that fits your enclosure accurately. So these are probably the most common way to heat different enclosures, and for good reason, because they work with a lot of different animals. Probably the biggest pro is that it gives your animal belly heat, and for some animals this is really important. I always highly suggest to give animals like ball pythons and other snakes and then different burrowing lizards, it's best that they can get some belly heat. So probably the biggest pro with these heat mats is they can give your animal belly heat. So they can just sit in an area and then absorb that heat from that area, because the pad will be heating up the substrate right above it. Some animals are really going to benefit from this, and I highly suggest them for different animals, including a lot of different snakes, a lot of different burrowing lizards, leopard geckos, all sorts of different things really benefit from these because they can just sit under their hide or wherever this is to warm up. Another great thing about these is they do not emit any light, so you can use them during the day or at night. These are also really common if you're going to be using tubs or rack systems or different things, because it's going to be difficult to have lighting, especially on tubs. And on rack systems, you're going to want everything to be super compact, so just sliding a heat mat into each spot is going to be a lot easier than trying to get all of the lighting and heat lights and everything set up. Reptile thermostats work great, and I use them for multiple of my animals. You can find that in the description, and it's a great way to keep your temperatures exact in certain areas with that heat mat. So although these are really good for some things, they do have some cons, one of which being they don't really work for wood enclosures. They really just work for glass or plastic enclosures. So if you have a custom made thing, you're going to have a lot of difficulty using one of these, and you're probably going to need to look at different ways to heat your enclosure if you have a custom made enclosure made out of wood or something that doesn't really have glass or plastic usable areas. In addition to that, you're not really going to be able to use it if your enclosure has a drainage layer. I actually just recently talked about this with me trying to figure it out, and I guess really the only way you could do it is if you put it on the side so it kind of heats up, but it is going to be more difficult if you have some sort of drainage, if your enclosure is a naturalistic setup with a vivarium sort of style or whatever, so it'll be more difficult to get that belly heat onto your animal. The final pro I have for the heat mats is a lot of animals are going to like to bask. Probably the most common example would be a bearded dragon. They really enjoy sitting up on something high or on a hide, so they can bask under their, I guess, artificial sun and just soak in that warmth, not necessarily through the substrate. Because these don't actually emit heat into the air, they're really just going to emit heat onto the substrate. It's going to be more difficult to get them an actual basking spot with heat mats, and it's probably really not possible at all. Next up, we can move on to the ceramic emitters or ceramic heater or whatever you want to call it. And this is made out of ceramic, and it just goes into a usual light socket, so you can use them with the heat lamps. Make sure the heat lamp you're using can actually hold whatever wattage this is, because these can get really hot depending on the wattage you get. Again, these are going to be best with a thermostat to keep the temperatures in check. I really would rarely use this without a thermostat. But one of the pros to this is you can actually use it as a basking spot. If your animal, say, needs UVB or something, then you can just have a UVB bulb and then this on the other side, so they get their UVB and their basking spot. Even if they don't need that UVB, this can go right on top in a certain area, and they'll be able to find that warm area in the enclosure so they can go ahead, bask, and warm up. Because these do not need any light, these can also be great at night because they don't let off light, and a lot of different reptiles are going to need specific nighttime temperatures. For example, a ball python really shouldn't drop below 75 degrees. So if your house gets cooler than that, you can use one of these in the enclosure, connect it to a thermostat, and then just set that to 75 degrees, and it'll keep it warm in that area without bothering them with any extra light. These are also good because they can come in extremely high wattages, so if your animal needs a really hot basking spot, it won't be too hard to do it with these ceramic emitters. There's one main con to these, and that's that they just destroy humidity. I don't exactly know the science behind it, but when you're using these heaters and you have it, any humidity in that area is just going to evaporate way quicker than it will with something like a heat bulb. That could be a good thing, I guess. If your enclosure is too humid, you could bring it down using a ceramic bulb, as long as you're keeping the temperatures in check to what they need. But a lot of animals are going to need humidity on the higher side, so they're not necessarily a bad option, but you have to keep that in mind because you might have a little bit more difficulty maintaining that humidity that they need. But other than that, these are really good to use. I've been using them for a good few months now with a few animals, and I'm going to continue using these. Finally, we've got heat bulbs that actually let off light. These really aren't too different from the ceramic bulbs, the main difference being that they let off actual light, so it can be good if your enclosure doesn't have any light on it. Some of these have basically built-in UVB and heating, so you can do it all in one bulb. And yeah, it acts as your day and night cycle because it will let off a bunch of light and really light up the whole enclosure, while at the same time letting the animals get warm and bask in that area. Keep in mind the colored ones can be seen by reptiles. I did a video on this to kind of just debunk that myth about using these at night, and that is bringing us into the first con, and that is you can't use them at night because they let off light. You're not going to be able to heat your enclosure with these without messing up their day and night cycle, because the only way that these can let off heat is when they're actually turned on, of course. In addition to that, some nocturnal animals and albino animals are simply going to be more sensitive to light. Every reptile should have a day and night cycle, which means that they'll have light about 12 hours a day so that they know when it is daytime and when they should go sleep and when they should come out and eat and everything. However, these can be super intense lights, so different animals, like I said, albinos and nocturnals, might be too sensitive to it and it might bother them. I guess you could use a colored one. You could use one of the colored dimmer ones because it is not going to let off quite as much light and just blind your animal when they come out, but that's something to keep in mind. So those are the three heating that we were talking about today. We've got the heat mat, the ceramic emitter, and the different actual basking bulbs that let off light. None of them are necessarily better than the others because it really depends on the animal and how you think it'll work best to heat your enclosure. But hopefully that did help you out. You can find all this stuff again in the description, 2 Amazon links where you can buy it all. Again, the reptile thermostats are going to be really useful with these because you'll be able to make sure your animal doesn't get burned with a heat mat or overheat with a ceramic or whatever. So it's a good, easy way to keep everything in check. But let me know your opinions on these different heating things, and if you know of any other heat sources that can work for your animal. If you want to see daily photos and videos, you can also follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But yeah, that'll be it for this video. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.